Today's guest is a multidisciplinary healing practitioner who trains people to heal themselves and connect to Source. He has accumulated knowledge of over 425 healing modalities. He is the author of the book, There Are No Lines in Heaven, and also he is an NDE experiencer. Let's welcome today's guest, Dr. Scott Robinson. Welcome.
Welcome to you too, and thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's interesting as we talked a little bit beforehand, getting to understand a little bit the background of where people come from, of the concepts of familiarity, but also growth and change, or different concepts that we learn and come into our lives, such as some of the things that you've experienced. Um, you've been a near-death experiencer, and I interview a lot of people who've had these experiences, and there are some similarities and there are some differences that people share or have. Um, Maybe you could just take us first a little bit back to that one of the NDEs that you had, one of the profound ones of when your parents came to see you uh, after the
You're
accident.
talking about the time that I ended up in the morgue, and that
Yes,
was my first NDE. I had two, and I was always joking around. I didn't have one, I had two.
right.
Uh, the first one, I was 17 years old. I had just been given a gift as I was getting ready to graduate. My father was a car dealer, and he bought me a Mercury Montego, 1968. It was a used car, but he got me it for like 400 bucks. And it was a really powerful little car. I was like, oh, this is a hot car, just great for, going out on dates and stuff like that. The old car had, if you remember, they didn't have, uh, when you had one seat, one person, you had a bench,
Right, right.
and so I thought, oh, that's really cool. I could have a lot of dates. Um, the car and I were going to one morning go to Lake Opatcon in New Jersey, right on the border of New York, New Jersey. And I was going to go fishing because I had never been fishing. And as I got on the car, I just picked up my friend, and we were driving on Route 80, heading west, and we were then going to take Route 17, or I forgot the highway, to get up to Lake Opatcon, and I never made it. I remember looking down at my hands and going, wow, if this is death, there's nothing to worry about. I have no pain, no feeling, nothing.
Wow.
And I had absolutely no idea what had transpired. Suddenly, I woke up on the east side of the car, the passenger side of the car, and somebody was opening the door, and my head was hurting, and I heard, he's DOA. And I fell out of the door, landed on a cop's shoe. I knew it was a New Jersey State Super Trooper, and hit his boot. And I heard, he's DOA. And that's all I remember. And then I'm pulled back out of this episode. I didn't know how I had gotten there, didn't know what had happened. I am then traveling above the earth. A being calling my guardian angel, called my guardian angel. He said, do you know what those are? Look at the earth. Tell me what you see. And you'll see in the picture behind me, there's a picture of the earth from the sky. And you would see, from what he told me, I saw lines coming up at me. And he said, do you know what those are? And I said, no. And he said, those are different forms of prayer. The thin ones are individual prayers, and the thick ones that look like a tree trunk, those are multiple prayers for the same reason or person. So a lot of people praying for the same thing. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And he said, we got to go now. And I went down and back into the tunnel. People talk about the tunnel where you see the lights just flash right by you, like you're driving at 100 miles an hour. And then I arrived at the gates of heaven. And when I arrived there, I saw my grandfather, who I'm named for. And when I met my grandfather, he said, you can't stay here. You don't belong. You haven't fulfilled your purpose and missions in life. You have to go home or go back to Earth. And I went, oh, wow. But he said, but I got somebody for you to meet. And so he took me into a room, and there were three beings. Two of them were facing me, and I didn't recognize them. One was facing away from me, so I saw their back, and he turned around And I said, "Are you the being everybody calls Jesus?" And he said, "I'm called by many names, but because of your heritage, I was born into a Jewish family. I will call you the little Prince of Peace, and you can call me Big Brother. Anytime you need me, simply call out for me, and I will be there for you. But you have to return now. You have to fulfill your purpose and missions in life." And I said, "What are those?" And he said, "You will learn a simple technique to heal yourself and share that with other people." I went, "Oh, I gotta go." And I took my right hand and I hit my left hand. I went, "Oh, shoot." And the next thing I knew, I was back in my body. And at that very moment, my parents had been called by the cops to come and identify my body in the morgue. And my parents had just pulled back the sheet that was covering over me as I was being prepared to be pushed into the cold unit, the refrigeration unit. You know, you've
Yeah,
seen those things, and you've seen some of my other pictures where they put you in the refrigeration unit. And as they pulled it back, I sat up and I said, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, I met grandpa, I met God." And that changed everything. My dad said, "Hey, son, you've been in an accident. Come with me." And I went, "Oh, I got the worst headache." And they said, "Son, we'll help you." Mom took my one arm, dad took my other arm. They helped me get off the metal table. If you've ever been on one of those tables, it's just a metal
yeah, yeah.
thing
I've
that they
seen that.
stick you on. There's wheels attached. They go into the refrigeration unit, and it was cold. And they took me out. I walked out of the morgue, and they opened the door, put me in the back seat. I laid down on the back of the Volkswagen that we were in because I couldn't sit up. I had the worst headache. We drove away. The next day, they would take me to Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx because my dad's um, place where he would sell would be on Jerome Avenue. And they couldn't identify what had happened to me. They didn't know what had occurred. The word near death experience was only just released by the original author. And my doctor and my mom both found the book, Life After Life, gave it to me and said, "I think you better read this because we can't identify it. The only thing we can identify is that you have very high levels of DMT on it, dimethyltryptamine, which is something very common after somebody's had a real true near death experience." And so I did. I was wired after that. I didn't have to take coffee or tea or anything. I just had all these energy. And over time, I would learn this simple technique and keep going. I didn't take a lot of pain medication as a result because DMT in itself is not only a hallucinogenic,
Yeah.
it is also a natural painkiller. And no matter what was happening with my head and body parts, this helped me out a lot. The second near death experiences was 18 years later. I was already practicing as both a chiropractor and a medical examiner for the state of California Division of Workers' Compensation. I was a pilot and I went up for some training. You always go into training, you never stop. And my instructor was with me, and we were practicing touch and goes up in Lake Arrowhead, which was in the mountains, uh, where I was learning how to get on and off a runway that was icy cold, wet. And if you missed the runway properly, you would end up in the lake. And so my instructor took me off. We went up to about 12,000 feet, and I began to get very dizzy. I was lightheaded, almost passed out. My instructor took me down to about 9,000, maybe less, almost 8,000 feet, and I regained consciousness. She landed the plane for me. She suggested I go see my medical examiner for review because pilots have to have an annual review anyway, and I was due for an annual review. I went to my review, and the flight examiner said, "You're bleeding internally. We can't figure it out. We're going to send you to the Keck Institute. That's part of USC Medical Center." And they did. They found out my bleeding had continued. I was extremely anemic. They said, "Well, we don't like what we see. We found something on x-ray, and we're going to suggest that you have a particular type of therapy." And I said, "No way." I said, "I'm not taking your therapy. I do not accept your diagnosis or your prognosis. I am going to go to Mexico where they have treatment for alternatives. But if I take your medicine, I know that I won't be around very long. And I said, besides being a chiropractor, me and the drugs you just recommended, not my cup of tea. So I would go down, work with the Gerson Institute and Hilda Clark, Cure for All Diseases. And I would come back about 3 months later, go back to those same doctors. They say, oh, we couldn't find anything wrong with you. We must have made a mistake. And I reminded them, I am a former medical examiner. I go to court for a living. And the doctor then shut up, said, my records disappeared, instantaneously vanished.
Wow.
He retired, the other doctor died, and the third doctor, who was 7 feet tall, was the tallest doctor I have ever seen. And he kept being nasty to me and saying negative things, and nobody can cure themselves, and God can't do anything for you. Anyway, he got me so upset I had to leave, go and pray and forgive him and move on. I felt bad for anybody that was going to go to that doctor because they didn't believe in alternatives. They didn't believe in God. They didn't believe in healing. And I just had to get out. Again, when I had the second near-death experience, I would come out of my body. And I'm sure that you've heard the term veridical. It means coming
No.
out of your body, knowing that you're there. You actually examine and imagine what's going on around you. You can see it, feel it, hear it, experience it. I knew that the doctor and the nurse were having an experience of some kind, like an affair. I could see what they were wearing, especially in their shoes. And when I told the doctors about that near-death experience, how I was told I would learn a simple technique to heal myself and share that with other people, that technique is called Einstellen, or tuning into the source, asking for help and healing. Um, the nurse didn't like that I knew what was happening. I knew what they were talking about. And she quit. She moved away from that hospital. She broke off the relationship with the doctor. The doctor stepped down from his what he did for his living. He was the director of something,
Right.
and suddenly he wasn't working there anymore. I moved on, was working with the Gerson Institute, like I said, got to do the alternative therapies and work with them, both as being the doctor and the patient, and realized there was a lot that could be done, not just in alternatives, but spiritually.
Right.
And I knew that I was no longer going to be a chiropractor. That was not my thing. As a matter of fact, the other side told me, you're no longer going to be a chiropractor. You work for us on the other side, and you're going to help other people. You will have gifts to help others. And as time goes on, you will use them as they become stronger and stronger. And so that's what I would do. So my own medical profession and the medical doctors all had written me off. I couldn't function doing the old things anymore. I needed to look into all these different alternatives, and especially prayer. I knew that I could identify things around people in their auric field when I came back. I could tell if somebody was abused by another person or forced to do something they didn't want to do. I knew that no matter what their diagnosis was, I knew what God had in plan for them, what was going on for them, what they had to do to fulfill their purpose and missions in life. And I would lead people to different alternatives and spiritual healing techniques that worked for them.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, I spent over 3.5, no, I'm sorry, I take that back, $308,000 of my own money, ended up having to go bankrupt on it. And I would find that most of the alternatives that what I would come across over the next few years were a waste of time and money and a waste of energy. And I would then realize what would work for me and share that with other people. And so about 2 years ago, before my mom died, the angels appeared to me and said, you will return being a doctor. I said, you really? I'm going to go back to being a doctor? They said, yes. And you're going to have to write a book. And that's how the book started to come about. One of the people that I was working with for the Gerson Institute was a Christian man who was told from his church that only Christians went to heaven, or they were the first in line to go to heaven, and nobody else could go to heaven if you didn't believe in Christ. I said, it's funny. Nobody ever told me that on the other side. I'm Jewish and I believe in Christ, and I know that he's my big brother. And so I would talk to him and I said, why do you want to hire me? You're so sure about all these other things. And they said, well, the Gerson Institute said that you met Jesus on the other side. And I said, yeah. And I call him Big Brother. And he said, well, I want to learn from you. I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ. And yet I've never met Christ. I said, well, it might have something to do with the fact that my line of heritage, I'm related to the family of David. My actual relationship is that Aaron and Moses are relatives. My mother's family, Simon's, are directly descendants of Aaron in the Bible. He would have been like my grandfather 798 times removed.
Wow.
Moses would have been my uncle, about the same thing. We had a lot of rabbis in the family, Orthodox. They came from Russia and Austria-Hungary in the times in the late 1800s when the family moved to the United States.
Yep.
And I knew I was different. From the time of birth, I knew that I had just missed somebody that was really important that I needed to know, and that they had left the earth and returned to heaven when I had come to earth. And I told my parents that. I was a little different and unique. I could predict things before they occurred. And I was already being able to predict who would win a game, who to bet on, things like that. But I was also told from the other side, you're not here for ego or greed. You're simply here to help other people. And that's what happened. I was different, unique, and had different abilities to do things that nobody could understand. And I stood out. People would think I'm weird, but that's okay.
Yes.
I knew I came back and had an agreement with the Creator, and that Big Brother God, that's known as Jesus the Christ, Yeshua ben Yosef Barabbas, was here to help me. He would lead me to other beings who then would help me continue my mission and purpose in life and to help other people do the same. And as a result, I came back with the ability to identify things around people and tell them what they needed to learn and clear, especially emotional things, and what prayers to use, and all of the other things that were necessary depending on the person's diagnosis. I also told them, don't go over your earthly diagnosis, don't accept it, because that's something that is from evil. For instance, the other side told me that God created this earth for what he called a school. This was the major university of earth. This university would be a schooling planet where all the evil in the universe would be placed. And as a child of God, we would volunteer to come down to this reality and master it, endure, persevere, and overcome, becoming closer to the Creator, realizing that we could do this and push away the evil that was stationed here and know what to do with it. If you couldn't recognize God, you're going to be stuck in a reality of good versus evil. If you could identify what was really going on, then you would sit back and observe it and no longer accept the evil that was on this planet. Instead, most people would either be in the situation of being in the path of God, observing that path, like being in a parade. They were either in the parade or observing the parade,
Right.
or like myself, to sit back and not participate in it, but observe it and help people get out of it, recognizing their connection to the source. So that's what I do. And I've been doing that all along. So 2 years ago, when they said you're going to write this book and help other people, I thought I was going to do that and teach my old chiropractic college what they needed to do in alternative medicine and spiritual healing. And originally the dean said, sure. I wrote this book, 360 pages long. I talked about my experiences in reality. And then half the book was all of the alternatives available that could make a difference in helping people heal. Chapter 6 in the book was basically the synopsis of what exactly I was talking about. So you would go to chapter 6, which was the original chapter number 1, and move to the back, because my original editor said, we want to put this in the back, not in the front. So the next dean that came about at school said, no, we've decided we don't want to use your alternative medicine and spiritual healing. Don't ask us, don't be involved, and we're not going to participate with you. And I said, what am I going to do? And God said, don't worry. There's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to find your book and look for help and healing using all the alternatives you suggested, and then be able to teach these people what they need to know. So it's basically divine training sessions. I don't do the healing, God does.
Yeah.
God is the greatest physician, and I'm just there to help them realize their mission and purpose in life and what they need to do to heal. So that's what we work on. And that's how I help other people. And currently, because of the things that you asked me about and questions that you ask, people will contact me and said, I'm very interested in learning how to connect to God and what I need to know about my own life on this earth. So we do. So I have people from at least 13 different countries contact me, people in the United States and outside the United States who are looking for answers to find their path and their mission and purpose in life and what they need to accomplish so they can master their reality, endure, persevere, and overcome with any challenges, and not accept any diagnosis given to them by any other doctors for any other purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's important. So I do all sorts of things to help everybody. And it is what God comes through me to help other people. Many times people will say, do you remember what you said? No, because I'm not the one talking. It's
Right.
God
Right.
talking through me and being told what you need to do to change your life and your reality. When I remember what I give to a person, that's coming through for me in my heart, my head. But when I don't remember, it's simply God giving the instructions what this particular person needs to do or be to help themselves heal and no longer accept anything but the good and God.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting experience being who I am
Yeah.
and realizing that my body is just what it is. And it is my experience to understand who and what I really am, mastering what God wants me to do, and then share that with other people. I'm basically helping other people realize why they're here and what they must do.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Such an interesting story. I have so many questions along the path. Maybe you could touch upon the fact that at what point was it before the NDE in your life that you had these voices, these images, this psychic ability, this insight? Did that happen prior to the NDEs or did this happen after the NDEs?
Before my original near death experiences, I knew that I was different and I had an understanding that I wasn't like most human beings. The other people had symptoms going on and they know that they didn't fit and they didn't match the way that they were being told, if whether they were Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, or Muslim. They knew that they had something that was different, and they knew that they were stuck in being told what they had to do by the people who believed that God was only one way or
Right.
another. And they had to figure that out. And so my job came to do that. Now, when I had the first near death experience, I began to realize I was being tested. Who was doing what what was God asking for? What did I have to learn or know about to help other people? And they were always testing me from the other side. Is this good? Is this bad? You're learning something from it. Do you have to be divinely guided? Are you being tested? What's going on? And how do you deal with it? So it took a long time to
Yeah.
identify what I needed to learn from this. On any given time, I'd be tested by something, and
Yeah.
I would be given, well, here's the Jewish side, here's the Christian side, here's the Buddhist side, here's the Hindu side, here's the Muslim side. Here is what you need to know about and why. And people would ask, and I would tell them what the divine had just told me so that they could experience whatever challenge it was, whatever test they had to go through, and let go of all the burdens and give it away back to God.
Yeah.
And it was training, basically.
Yeah. you have it, the interesting thing for me to hear is that uh, it's a universal connection for you to be able to have the ability to not be pushed towards one religion, but to see it from the perspective of God. And you receive, as you had this near-death experience, you were gifted with the opportunity to pass on the healing modality that you speak about, which was Einstellen. And how could you explain that term in terms of what it is and what it does?
Einstellen means tuning into the source and asking for help and healing. It's your own way of understanding the divine path for a person. Is it acceptable to everybody? No. About 70% of the people who learn Einstein say, no, this is not for me. 30% will, and they'll be learning how can they connect to God with this? How can they utilize this training? And how can they put it beyond the test that God gives you to then connect to the source and create the answers you need for your own help and healing, whatever that may be. Is it something that everybody will appreciate? No. You have to begin to ask yourself, what can I do to connect? Am I really being honest with what I understand? Is this being a test for me and my own physical body and its divine connection? 95% of the healings come from the spiritual perspective, and only 5% actually come from the physical form, because a lot is carried from past lifetimes,
Yeah.
past experiences, past realities. And how can you put this test to work where it's not something foreign and it becomes part of your divine connection to whatever it is? So it is an ancient path, Einstein. It has been around for eons, but very few people are aware of it. They don't know what to do with it. They have to identify it and where it comes from. There's only two sources where God will talk to you, either the good and God or the bad and the evil.
Right.
And you have to be able to differentiate the two. And who are you connected to? Many people can't do that. So they have to figure it out. Overall, 25 million to 50 million souls will be thinking about that spiritual connection of who they are and why they're here, their mission and purpose in life, and why God sent them to earth. Is it a test? Are they going to go with this? Are they going to define themselves by good or evil? Are they going to figure out what's best for them and their reality? Do they get caught in the game of life? Or do they choose a different way and understanding that they will experience this reality through these tests? Every day there'll be something to test you with. Does it test you about what the truth is? Are there things coming down that are burdens to you? Or if you hold on to any of these tests, are they going to keep you from letting go of these negative things? Or are you going to be able to manifest those things and pass towards a positive benefit and reality? It's like, wow, they give you all these things, these tests, and you have to figure out what's good and what isn't. Is it a game? Can you master this reality? Can you be there and get through all these different things? Are you experiencing everything that's going on? Who's testing you? Are they actual tests that you can get rid of some of it and hold on to something else? Are they, for instance, Jesus had things that were tested and he had to be able to master these things and be stronger than any other things. He had a fight between good and evil. Can the average person do that? I don't know. Each person is different. You will experience your reality independently from anybody else.
Right.
Are you living a different life? Are you accepting what you hear? Do you hear the negative? Or are you hearing the positive? What do you do about it? How do you figure it out? Are you going to change your understanding of your reality? Or are you going to accept the negativity? It's all a matter of each individual soul figuring out why they're here and what they must do.
Yeah.
And you have to figure that out with anybody who's open to it. 30% of the reality of the people will be, well, we seem to understand this and we're different and we're accepting a different reality to life. But in actuality, 28 of the 30% really won't accept or actually live the truth for themselves. Only 2% will. So some people will experience the truth, some people won't. Some will claim they understand the truth, but they really won't do anything about it. And they will be stuck with the old and the negative. So they have to figure out how
Yeah.
they can deal with something.
So
How do they accept it?
yeah, so how do you assist somebody on this path with the Einstellen techniques and other techniques that you use? Do you hear the information come to you? Is it spoken to you? Is it a download for the person? I guess you can tell
Well,
us.
first thing I start with is I have a particular prayer that I must do. That's for the person. And I will actually go through a specific type of prayer. We will accept what is available to us for Jesus, for Michael the Archangel, for all the other beings. Is it something that we have to get rid of? Is there negative, evil things? What do we do about it? We don't accept anything that's satanic or any evil of any kind. And you know that you can overcome almost anything if you don't accept the evil thoughts and only accept the positive and the good ones. Each one has a different terminology. And right now, at the moment, I am filled with the Holy Spirit, and I'm like, wow, I feel like drunk. And it's hard for me to actually explain some of the terminology, but I will do that with each person. They will identify who and what they are and why they're here. They'll understand their mission and purpose in life, what will be accepted and what won't be accepted, what they will think of as interference, what they have to get rid of, and what they will keep. They will be divinely guided with everything they do and be divinely guided as to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable on any given thing. I am, completely filled with the energy to not accept anything that's negative or good. If it's negative, I don't want to deal with it. I won't accept anything that's negative. I will only accept the good and God, and everything else is unacceptable and I push it away. So we
So,
clear that. So
yeah,
you do a certain prayers depending, and in the book, um, for this, there's going to be whole segments and sections just about different kinds of prayers that needed to be used for a particular person. Then we go over Einstellen, what works and what doesn't work. How do you connect to the source of God? Then we're going to remove any negative energy or emotion and eliminate it so that you can be divinely guided to the right thing you need to let go of. Then you will also use verbal frequencies, what works and what doesn't work, what can happen and how can you utilize it. And then I use something called ER small a SR, which is basically eraser. How can we erase the negative things out of your body, mind, and spirit and change it so that you can function better with what you need and are divinely guided? Now, there's a lot of stuff going on simultaneously. There's always tests. Every day you're going to be tested. What accepts and what doesn't get accepted? What do you need to get rid of? What don't you accept the bad stuff? And how do you get rid of it? And changing what is good for you and your understanding of reality. There's always something that's going to be tested. You're going to be tested every day, what is good and what it isn't. And you have to figure that out. Um, I can't even put the words together because I am so high at the moment as we're talking. And I can't even, unless you ask a specific question, I can't give it to you because I'm like, whoa, I'm high.
well, I feel that way too.
Yeah.
But that's
So,
yeah. Uh, all right. So let's ask a specific question then. So, what are the healing frequencies? And how do you use them?
There's a multitude of healing frequencies that need to be observed. And the healing features are a little different. Um, Verbal frequencies. One of the teachers that instructed me was a man by the name of Lloyd Meir. And he also had a near-death experience. And he was able to figure out the number that was associated with a negative thing, such as fear. That's the number one. How to eliminate fear, false evidence that appears real. And he found out that if he took the number and he switched it around and he put it backwards, that the backwards frequency, 873296674888, if you repeat that number 15 times, suddenly you stop being afraid. Afraid of whatever. Most humans are afraid of everything. 99 and 9/10% of humans are afraid of something on any given day, anytime, and by utilizing that number, 873296674888, and repeating that number at least 15 times, the person stops being afraid. And you do it right before you go to sleep, you will stop having fear. You'll sleep better. You'll stop having any type of adrenaline or issues dealing with adrenal cortex, and you'll stop being afraid.
Wow.
The next thing is overwhelm. You stop feeling overwhelmed. So it's 62648498, 62648498, 62648498. That number will stop feeling overwhelmed. And that stops you from being able to function and to be able to actually help yourself heal. Then you can, it could be frustration. There's numbers to stop that. The biggest thing that people forget is, well, not only the overwhelmed, but the people are stuck with the imagination of forgetting how to forgive other people. People do not know how to forgive themselves and other people. That's one of the things that happens in humanity. So basically, I help people remember 116-979-458, 116-979-458. That number will help people forgive themselves. People have a tendency to forgive other people, but they forgive them, they forget to forgive themselves of this issue. People will forgive other people, but they'll forget to forgive themselves.
Right.
Not only that, but they have to come across some other things, such as forgiveness, blessing, thanking, or even loving in order to change themselves. And that will be, I forgive you, I forgive me, I forgive us. I bless you, I bless me, I bless us. I thank you, I thank me, I thank us. I send you love, I send me love, I send us love. Amen. People do not know how to forgive themselves or other people. Once they learn to do this and then bless people, they will change their reality and stop everything that they need to know to forgive. And it comes in every day. If you
Yeah.
forgive yourself and other people, you no longer need to have anybody to forgive anything or anyone at any moment. You will master this reality, endure, persevere, and overcome, and make the difference. Otherwise, they might be stuck and not know how to deal with it. So you have these verbal frequencies to eliminate these common things to change their reality. Now, they have ways to change their reality and understand what's going on with their life and their experience with their reality. Most people don't know what to do with themselves. They're stuck and they don't know how to deal with their reality. So I teach people all these different things that they need to know and that makes a difference in their reality with their life.
Yeah.
People will be explained. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal with it. And now I teach people how to do something different and change their reality and whatever's due, whatever
Excellent. Yeah.
has to change.
Interesting. Um, if somebody were interested in a session, What is it? How long does the session last, and what does it look like?
The average person will be 90 minutes long and asks for 125 to be able to experience this reality. Individual, each person, what's ever going on, they will ask for help and healing. So if they have 125 and they ask a question about it, we set up something to interview with them, figure out what they need to know, and they will do whatever's necessary to figure out what they need.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you wanted to leave the audience with a lasting message, what would you say?
Mm. Basically, everybody has to figure out what and who they are and why they're here in this reality. They have to master that reality, like we said earlier, and they have to figure it out. Do they have a test, a cross to bear? Do they have something to ask about? And they have to overcome their understanding of why they're here and what they must they do.
Yeah.
Um, it's basically simple,
Okay.
and they will figure out what they need to do and experiment.